Like I never realized like, oh, I can believe in myself. And when I kind of started to apply myself in different things that I love to do, that, hey, you know what? I'm good at this. And maybe I wasn't a good student and maybe I wasn't book smart, but somewhere along the way, I'm street smart.
You're listening to Staring at the World with BoDeans, Kurt Newman, a T. Torrance Productions original podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm Kurt Newman, and we're staring at the world today with Stacy Madison. You know, if you were ever in the supermarket deli section in the late 90s, early 2000s, you saw these black bags with yellow writing on it that said Stacys. They're for Pita chips. It's something we hadn't had before, but then once you ate them, you were addicted to them. So stick around and let's hear the success story of Stacey's Pita chips. Hey everybody, I'm Kurt Newman, and we are staring at the world today with Stacy Madison, one of the geniuses behind Stacey's Pita chips and her new product, the Behold bars, all around me here. Be bold. I keep saying behold, but it's be bold, and I should know that.
That's all right. Behold, it's be bold. I mean, that worked.
Anyways, as I was saying at the beginning of this in the intro, if you were, anywhere near a deli section of a supermarket in the late 90s, early 2000s, you couldn't help but notice a product that was showing up there that you had never seen before in these black bags with yellow print that said Stacey's on them. And we all tried them, and they were these delicious salty pita chips that were wonderful to eat, and we all got addicted to them. And Stacy had a wonderful success story to tell about her product and coming to it, and we'll get to all that. I just first wanted to welcome her to the show because we've been trying for months really to find some way to do an interview where you were even going to come to Austin. We were going to try and do it in person, but between your team getting COVID and my team getting COVID, we just couldn't get it to happen. And so I appreciate you.
I'm sorry that I can't be there in person with you today because I really wanted to, and I haven't done an in-person in so long, and I was like, oh yes, I don't care, I'm going to Texas to do this. I don't care, I am going to do this in person. But then 3 times I think we bumped it, so it's nice at least that we get to do it today on Zoom.
Yeah, and I know you're busy. I really appreciate you fitting this in, just because I think it's an interesting story to tell, and I'm really happy that you're here to tell it to people, because on this podcast I like to concentrate on what I call a creative element, and it's not just in music or arts that you find the creative element. You find it everywhere in the world, and that's the point I keep trying to make to people. So I try to talk to all different people in all different areas of their life that kind of followed either their passion or their intuition and found some way to some type of success that they had, whether it was just in their art or in monetary means or whatever. But you're a great example of that, for one, so I'm really happy we got to sit down and talk to you about this now. What I like to do, and if you don't mind, is I like to go and start with your humble beginnings of childhood, because I have this theory that, who we are as adults had a lot to do with where we came from and the type of people that were around us and helped kind of form who we became. And sometimes it's just a really interesting story. But can you tell the audience here everything kind of about what your childhood was like, whether what your parents did or how any things influenced you growing up that were around you at the time, and what your life was like?
Yeah, sure. My dad was a psychologist, entrepreneur wannabe. And I think, he studied so long and he had a successful psychology business, and but he always had kind of some kind of side gig, whether it was a sneaker shop or I don't know, he always, or a referral service, or he always kind of had something going on the side. So
side hustle.
Yeah, he always had a side hustle. And I think that that's probably what he would have wanted to do had he not been a psychologist. But, I think him and my mom met when they were in college, and they got married, and student housing and couples housing they even had for people who got married back then. And Yeah, I think that it was important to him to have a stable income and start a family. And I think he very much succumbed to the uh, this is traditional. This is what I have to do. He was a product of the 50s, and that was what people did.
Kind of what he
So,
had.
and I
He
think
had
I
to
think
do
he
it for.
succumbed to that.
He had to do a regular job, but he also had the things on the side that he really was interested in doing.
Yeah, and I think had he followed his passion, this is all coming to me now, how many years later? But as I'm speaking to you, Kurt,
Yeah.
it's like, I really do believe that if he might have been born, in today's day and age, he wouldn't have been a psychologist. He was wonderful at it. He loved it. But I think he probably would have taken that risk and started his own business.
Yeah. And then you was going to college. Your mom was going to college. What was she doing at the time?
So my mom was a teacher, a junior high teacher at the time. She did a couple of different things. She sold real estate. She was a teacher, but always some of the times she was home raising her kids, but for the most part, two parents, working. So it was just I think I grew up with a very strong work ethic because both of my parents did work.
Yeah, yeah. I know that too. I watched that. My mom was gone before I got up in the morning as a nurse, and my dad would go off at retail sales. And so I watched that very much too. And all the families around me were very much blue collar working families. And so that was very much instilled in me too. You grew up, I think, in Boston. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad always loved Massachusetts. When I was younger, I was born in Arkansas. We were in upstate New York, and then we moved to Boston. He was a big Red Sox fan.
Yeah. That's
I
cool.
remember driving from upstate New York to go to the games, which are in Boston at Fenway Park. It was like quite a long drive.
So
Four
pretty,
hours.
sounds like you're saying from your perspective, everything was just pretty normal, everyday childhood, nothing crazy like some of the people I talked to had really crazy aunts and uncles or things going on around you. But it sounds like you're saying, that your life was pretty average American like type growing up. That you feel that way.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it was very much the traditional family unit.
Did your parents
Um,
instill that idea of like some parents might have a perspective of like you're crazy for trying to do that. You'll never do it. What are you thinking kind of mentality? Or were your parents more of the mindset of, like you can do anything you want to? You're brilliant. You're smart. You'll be a success no matter what.
so I think I always had that unconditional love from my mom. I think I had unconditional love from my dad, but he was also probably, like I said, the product of his generation, where not so much in business, but personally for myself. Um, I remember when I said that I was going to have kids on my own, and what did he say? He said, oh no, I think it was when I told him I was getting divorced, and he said, because of my age, he said that I would end up being childless.
Ah, but you didn't.
So
That's good.
it doesn't mean that he didn't love me or that
No.
he didn't, he just wanted the best for me. He wanted me to have the traditional family
Yeah.
unit. And I really, I was at a time where I was in my late 30s, and you know, I really had to make some tough decisions for myself. And starting the business, starting my own family, these were difficult decisions that I made for myself.
Yeah.
And it took me well into my 30s before I started making my own decisions, and not
Sure.
decisions based on the boyfriend I was with or my dad or
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you grew up a little bit, you got out of high school, you went to college yourself and got degree, educated, stuff like that.
Yep, I went to UMass and got my degree in psychology and my graduate degree in social work. Again, my and I make my father sound so terrible, but I mean, I loved him dearly, and he loved us dearly.
Yeah.
But but I don't mean to make him sound bad, but he said that for my brother, if he wanted to go on and get his doctorate, that was fine for a guy, but for a woman, that it was better for me to get my degree in social work, because then I could have a nice part-time work and also raise a family and have children.
Yeah,
So he felt that was like, trying to set it up and this is your best scenario kind of thing.
Yeah, very much of that generation type mindset. Absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely what it sounds like. And you got your degree. Well, what some of the stuff I read is that you moved around a little bit before you really got to the work of Stacy's. That you had gone from was it California and Washington and Hawaii, some other places. Were you just looking to work in other places, or did you have ideas, or were you looking to just get out and see some of the world? What was going on there?
So in all honesty, Kurt, I was always living wherever the guy was that I was going out with.
Yeah, which is common of our, type age group. Absolutely. So you moved
And
around.
it's funny because like starting my own career was like I think at some point in time there was a turning point where I realized, well, I'm kind of I'm in California because of this, and I'm in Hawaii because that's where Mark was doing his internship. I was dating somebody else where I was engaged to this guy who was in DC.
Yeah.
So I was always following the guy's career.
Yeah.
And I guess this fits in well to Women's History Month. I'm getting very introspective here.
Yeah.
But
Also,
which is up and coming. But that really is like, what I did and the time that I grew up in. So
yeah, and I can't help but feel a little bit of a link to kind of what your dad was saying to you too at the time about almost you put the man's thing more important than yourself, which is what it took you. You're saying in your 30s to really change and start thinking more along the lines of what do I want to do and stuff.
What do I want myself? Yeah. And the male was typically, we were just kind of starting to see women in the workforce, and the male was typically the breadwinner and better income. And so I always put that as a priority, like, I have to find a guy first.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't until like I never realized like, I can believe in myself, and I can when I kind of started to apply myself in different things that I love to do, that, hey, you know what, I'm good at this. And maybe I wasn't a good student, and maybe I wasn't book smart, but somewhere along the way, I'm street smart.
Yeah.
And I have a good skill set and survival skills and all of these other things.
Which is something I try to talk to people on this podcast all the time about, because I was terribly not book smart in school. In fact, part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast was because I wanted to talk and put that in people's heads about, what are we teaching to kids, because I didn't see any teaching about like follow your creative passion in life when I was going through school. It was all about what are you going to do to make a living, because playing those drums and playing that guitar is not going to go anywhere. So you better figure out how you're going to make a living. And that's so instilled in you going through this scholastic process that I keep trying to open people's minds up of like, not every kid is made for that system in any way. Yeah. And that it's very difficult for people who don't, like who have dyslexia or something like that, to try to go through that process is almost impossible. And they weren't doing it back when I was in school about fixing it so people could get through that system. Or, the other thing I realized is that the creative process is at the core of everything we do. it's at the core of everything we do to make money in this society too, is that an idea is the big money maker, whether it's a movie or a product or whatever it is. It's the creative process, and yet we're not emphasizing that in any of our schools. We're not emphasizing that to our children, like, what are you thinking, what are you feeling, and things like that.
Yeah.
And which is, again, why I like talking to you today, because eventually you made your way back to Boston and started a food cart there, selling healthy pita sandwiches for people, right?
Yep. And listen, it would have been a hell of a lot easier if I was one of those people that just said, oh, I want to be an accountant, or
Right.
I'm good with numbers. And I always was. So I'm going to go to this school and I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go to this company and I'm going to, and knowing, having that security and that knowledge that I was going to have that income and I was going to not have trouble doing it. It was like, that would be nice. You want to lay it out that way. I'm going to be this old when I have kids. I'm going to make this much money. I'm going to, and I think there is definitely a danger in doing that. And I think that's probably why I hated my 20s, because I always expected so much was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was going to be at a certain place. And no matter what, you're disappointed.
Do you feel pressure? Like, you were supposed to be making something happen there, as you get up in your 20s and stuff. Like, I have kids now who are in their 20s and stuff too. And when they were young, they never expressed any of that kind of pressure. All of a sudden they hit their 20s. They're just like, I need to be doing something important here. Did you feel that kind of pressure there too?
Oh, totally. And I think that kids now and everybody graduating college now does feel that. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that to the people coming out of school now, that, it's just as important to recognize what it is that you love to do every day,
Right.
as it is to get that degree and to get that education, because somewhere along the road, they have to mesh, they have to kind of come together.
Yeah.
In order, and that's what's going to make you happy.
Right, exactly. And what I say to my kids too, it's like at the end of the day, no matter what you make or don't make, the happiness is the one thing that you got to find. That's really going to be the end goal, right? Whatever route you're taking to get to there, if you're not getting to happiness, then you're kind of failing on that road. Was there some reason in Boston that you felt like, I think I read that you thought there was a missing thing of people having healthy lunches, is why you kind of started the food cart, was that that people didn't have
so
that option.
I was coming back to Boston from California and Hawaii, and out there you could find a salad, you could find healthy options. And when you came back to the East Coast back in the 90s, there was nothing. You're lucky if you could get a salad, and then a Caesar salad with chicken. It was like a Caesar or a Greek or a chef, and that was it. That's like the whole menu. That's
or
all.
A Philly cheesesteak or something like that.
Yeah. So there wasn't a whole lot to choose from in the healthy category. So that's why, I fell in love with the whole healthy eating and accessibility to good food. And you're talking to somebody who, I never even had a piece of fish until I moved to California. Fish to me was just, never mind sushi or sashimi. Fish to me was just something that was stinky that my mother cooked in the kitchen. And I don't know.
No, my wife and daughter don't touch it either. They're exactly the same way. Like, they just don't want to have anything to do with it. And so,
but now it's like, after being in California and Hawaii and tuna right out of the sea and pineapple salsas and it's such a different story than I'm sorry.
Ooh.
It's such a different experience than when I was a kid, and basically there were two types of fish that you take home and you smell up your house.
But And then you started this thing with, I think it was the leftover pita bread. You were just going to cook it up and give it to people kind of as a free product
Yes.
as they were waiting in line, right?
Yeah, and if you want to talk about it in the business books or the Harvard study, they would basically say it was inventory management.
Yeah, right.
And really, that's a fancy way of saying that we never wanted to run out of bread.
Yeah,
And so we always purchased enough. So we would have enough to make sandwiches all day long. And at the end of the day, we would cut it up, make it into different flavored pita chips, and hand them out for free to people standing in line, just
yeah,
as an incentive to wait for their sandwich. And, I mean, they were popular. It was like a win-win situation.
yeah.
And if it's okay to jump ahead,
Sure.
um, everybody always asks, well, why the pita chips and why didn't you expand the cart? And or you did this. The cart was always a stepping stone to get into a restaurant. So why didn't you just keep following the same path? And I think that at times you have to step back and objectively ask yourself what makes sense. And even though we were starting this business so that we could get to having an indoor location, it was still winter.
Yeah.
It was very hard to get a space. The people loved the chips. So we figured one winter we would start with trying to market and sell the pita chips over, the cold weather, because it's Massachusetts.
Yeah.
In the winter is kind of hard with a food cart. So, you come to that point of inception where you have to make that decision, and it's not always what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and to me that is the pivotal thing that happened was that in life you run into these points of what can be seen as difficulty or a hurdle to get over or something like that, and finding some solution sometimes that just feels natural, even though it might be a lot of hard work. When I started this band, and we were young, we loved doing it, and it was still really hard, and we still had to play a lot of really awful gigs and stuff like that, but there was some energy behind it all that made it feel good. And I'm wondering, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I've just felt like that was kind of one of those moments there that you might have been having with your company as well, that what can we do here? Oh, this might be something, and you didn't think too far ahead of it. It just seemed like a good idea, and there was good energy behind it.
Yeah, and I mean, you've had an astonishing career, and what bravery to, be a musician and talent. I mean, I'm I think I'm doing it right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can, what I do is in business or art or whatever, sometimes you just do it because you have to, it just is where you are and it feels right to you, which is what, again, in this podcast, what I love to push out there to the world is look for those little bits of intuition you have inside of, this feels right, I'm going this way. And with your story, I just felt like that was one of those big moments of, what do we do in the wintertime? Well, they like these chips. Let's just try to bag them and get them in some stores. And then you had this, what I think is a really, really smart idea, was you had the idea of like, don't try to compete in the chip aisle, right?
Yeah, yep. Where that was one of the things that, like we knew that we wouldn't be able to make it in the chip aisle.
Right.
And we knew that. Look at how could we be selling our chips for like, at the time, $4 or $5 in a 6-ounce bag, and be sitting next to the pound Super Bowl bag of Doritos.
Yeah. But so you came up with an
$2.
interesting idea, which was, let's put them in the deli section. And that's what I think everybody noticed them, is walking through the deli section. There were these bags of, what is this? What are these? And it stood out. And I think that was brilliant.
That was a big part, Kurt, of our acquisition, because For a company like Pepsi who owns Frito, if you think of it as real estate,
Yeah.
That perimeter of the store really has, that's where your traffic flow is. That's where your so for somebody who has all of their equity, down aisle number 9, this really got them some waterfront property.
Yeah. Again, and I'm relating to it just from my perspective. We were a 3-piece band with no bass player, just drums, guitars, and 2 vocals, and it was weird and it was different, but it was what we had at the time, and so we worked with it. And I feel like that's kind of what you guys were doing. You're coming up with an idea. Let's try this. Let's try this, and somehow, it felt right. And I don't know how you talked all those supermarkets into putting it in the deli compared to the chip, because it must have been difficult to make the argument to them.
Well, the industry has changed a lot since the time that we started, but we launched also during the rise of the natural food business, and more like when we approached the deli section, we were able to speak one-on-one with the deli manager, and we did a case, like a 13 pack. So we realized, okay, we have a 12 in a case, and we could put a 13th bag across the top, and that was our sample bag. And the deli had the space, they had the people waiting. We could set up a a display shelf if we wanted to. So we found it easier to work with that aisle. I think that with the snack food aisle, a lot of those are done by different distributors, and they do their own stocking of the shelf. So for us to be in the deli section, it just made more sense, because the way that you're going to sell a pita chip, and you've eaten them, the way that you're going to sell a pita chip is to get them in people's mouths.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, with the new company, with Be Bold bars, it's really, that's what has made the pandemic so difficult, is it's really hard to sample. It's really hard to get people to try them.
Yeah.
And so when you have something that leads with taste, it's, that's how you sell, but now you can't get that into the people's mouths. So, one of the hurdles, strangers, right?
Speaking of the Be Bold bars, I read that you've kind of felt there was a bit of pressure to kind of follow up, Stacey's. Do you think that's pressure you're applying to yourself or people around you, everybody looking for you to develop the next big products? Because I guess we're skipping over a big part here is, Stacey's Pita Chips takes off to a massive scale where people are coming at you trying to throw millions of dollars at you to basically buy you out of the company, and they would take over, and that must have been an incredible time for you to go through. But you feel pressure about developing another product like that.
So, everybody thinks you have like the magic touch or something.
Yeah.
But and I not to downplay my skill set, I do feel that that I know how to be successful in this industry, just like
right.
How to play instruments, and you're good at that. This
Sure.
is kind of what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And the pressure came from sort of the state of what was happening in our country, and myself being dysfunctionally upset with things that were happening for women, and I felt like steps backward in a lot of areas. And for me, I felt like, well, you start to feel a little helpless, and so for me, it's like, whenever I felt that way, it's like, well, what can I do? What do I know how to do? And this is what I know how to do. And if there's one more female-founded company out there, and that makes a small bit of difference, then that's success.
Oh, it's absolutely success. Yeah. I know I'm just feeling it from my perspective again of the same thing. You have a hit record, everybody looks for you to have another hit record too and produce the same thing. And sometimes it's just something that happened in the energy of that moment, and you can't really look to recreate that all the time. It's a funny.
Yeah.
It was put to us around 1996 too, when we were having a hit song. It was put to us. One person manager said to me, "Well, this looks like it's going to be a hit, and even you guys couldn't stop it." Like as if we were these idiots who were going to get in the way of our own thing happening and stuff. And I'm wondering if when Stacey's really took off, if it kind of felt like that as well, as like this is unstoppable, and it's a thing of the moment, and it is what it is, and then people are offering you millions of dollars for it, and you feel like, or did you feel like it's almost like selling off one of your child or a creation almost, it's something near and dear to your heart.
It was really hard, and especially the few years afterward was, yeah, I was a bit of a mess and up and down. It was a little wonky, but um, it was a roller coaster ride. Even as we had hockey stick growth. We were
Yeah.
growing so fast, and you know you're doing what you love and you're building this company, and I had kids, and I can bring them into work and they're being raised in the lunchroom, and it's and then it keeps going and going and going and getting faster and faster and faster. And at some point, this company that you're running starts to run you.
Yeah. Right.
And some people at that point are okay with that and they just want to do it. But for Mark and I, it really, Mark was ready to do some traveling, to do, there's things that you can't do. And
Oh yeah.
it really got hard, and the company started running us. And whereas we used to just use creative energy and self-solving problems just from our own skill sets, then it becomes, okay, well, this problem needs to be solved, but then it's like lawyers and HR and all these other things that are kind of making decisions that we just always used to make on our own. So that it becomes really hard. And that's when we started also being approached by larger companies for the acquisition, and where we never thought that we would sell. That's when we sat down, we had that discussion. Maybe we should think about it. Maybe
Yeah.
it is time. How long are we going to do this? Do you want to do anything else?
Which
So
I know what you're speaking of, because, anyone, I guess, out there who's started a business and had to run it themselves, no matter how big of success they had, it knows what you're talking about. Maybe let's talk about that for a minute, of just work and life, and when you start your own business, it does feel like that, almost like it's work 24/7 all the time, and trying to find that balance in life. How did you navigate that? At first it seems like, oh, this is fun, but after you get more and more years of stress and figuring out problems every day, it's how do you navigate that? Or do you have advice for people out there to how do you navigate that work-life balance thing? And I know you've probably figured it out now, but I'm talking about back then. Can you tell us a little bit about it and how you came to figuring it out?
That's really hard. It's really hard to talk about because I don't necessarily believe there is work-life balance,
Ah.
or that I've mastered that.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I'm I
There's
know
no
that.
balance there.
It's my feeling too of I you're always working and you're always doing, but there must have been a point after you sold Stacy's off, um, that you had some time in your life to go, what do I want to do now? What am I going to do now? What was that like?
Well, yeah, but first you have to go through being very lost.
Hmm.
I was very lost. I was, because for a decade you're going to work every day. You're like, this is your whole life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just stops.
Yeah.
And then, even though I was contracted to stay on for 5 years and only work 20 days a year, I would go in every single day and going in every day. And then at some point where people are reporting to somebody else, and then it was just so different. At some point you start to ask yourself, am I doing any good? Am I helping the employees? Am I helping the customers? Or am I just in the way?
Yeah. And
And
so,
I did feel that in the beginning.
yeah.
Now I'm still, it's, almost 20 years later, and I still, they rotate through teams there, and which is a good thing for a large company. People get different experience and stuff. I get it. But I like every time there's a new team that comes in, I realize that in the beginning where I felt like I was in the way, now I've kind of gotten my role. And even though I'm not involved in the company anymore, I can do things that I want to do, like the Stacys Rise program. I know that you were interested in that before,
Yeah.
but I do things because I want to, not because I feel some obligation or because I have to. And Stacey's, well, it's got my name on the bag. It's always
Yeah.
going to be a part of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, as far as life goes, life throws you a lot of curveballs as well that you always have to deal with constantly. You never see coming. I think in 2005, was it, you had breast cancer and had to deal with that as well. How big of an eye opener or influence in how to live life was that period of your life?
Was it 2005?
I don't
I
know.
thought
That's
it
what I
was.
have written down, but I can't. You would know better.
I don't know. I think it's going to be, I don't know, maybe 8 years. Yeah, I think it was 8 years ago, about 8 or 9 years ago. But in any case, yeah, life throws you these curveballs, and all of a sudden, you're living your life day to day, and then you get a diagnosis like cancer, and now it's like the scarlet letter. Like everything is about cancer. Everybody you talk to, oh, or
Yeah.
how, I don't know. So like I just wanted, like when I found out, and when people, every conversation was, how are you feeling? Are you okay? You did it. And you could not escape. You couldn't get away from talking about your cancer.
Yeah.
And I know it's just out of love and kindness and people just being nice, but I just wanted somebody to make like a titty joke or something. I was just like, it just is all encompassing. And luckily I had a great team of doctors. I'm in New England. There's some amazing hospitals here. And knock on wood, everything is fine.
Well, thank goodness. I just ask because so many times I hear stories about people saying, like, I'm so grateful I had it because it just opened my eyes to the importance of everyday life and stuff like that. And it really changed their perspective from what they were doing before. But from what I'm getting, it's like you don't feel like it necessarily changed everything. You had a good view, good perspective, and you still feel the same way today as ever before.
Yeah, I think I was pretty clear cut on family values and
Yeah.
my kids and going for what's important. But you never, when I think, you just, I think I always had that appreciation, because you just never know when you're going to turn around and get hit by a bus.
That's for sure. That's for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
And when I was 16 years old, I was hit by a car. And I missed my sophomore year of high school. And I went through, a lot of physical injury. But I think as I got older, and then eventually I had, breast cancer that ran in my family. And so I wasn't as shocked, because I thought, well, I almost felt like, well, if somebody's going to get in my family, it might as well be me. And I'm physically fit and I'm strong and I try to stay healthy. So I said, I've been dealt this card and I just want to get it over with. Yeah. And I used to hate when people would say, you're, a breast cancer survivor, because I really felt like this was a blip in my life. and I just wanted to put it behind me. I had this 2-year window and I wanted to put it behind me.
Yeah.
When I got hit by the car, I had this 2-year window. It's done. And there are going to be times in life when the shit hits the fan, when you unexpectedly get hit by a bus, and thank God I'm alive. And it's a blip, and you have to move on. And hopefully that's the last time that happens.
Right. It sounds like you were really confident about getting through it, and I think that's a really great perspective to have on not just cancer, but anything you need to get through in life. That I'm moving through this, especially if you're putting a 2-year window on it. That's brave, and that's cool, and we're all happy that you made it through that. I want, you brought it up. I'd like to tell the people about the Stacys Rise project and some of the other stuff you're working on with women entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and how much of part of that your life is dedicated to that work.
Sure. I mean, like I said, for me, starting Be Bold was about being bold, about stepping up again, and about doing what it is that I know how to do. And with Stacys Rise and helping out Stacy's Pita Chip Company, I mean, they are working with women entrepreneurs who are, and they're matching. They obviously give them financial resources, but almost more important is they match them with mentors and with people at Pepsi who can, who are resources, who can guide them through some of the tough times. And there's extreme value in that. And it's the type of program that I would have wanted to do had I had the time and the money and all of that with Stacey's. So that's why I do it. I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful. So I'm involved with that. I'm also this month, for Women's History Month in March, I am doing on my Instagram at _, Stacy Madison. I chose 4 women who, for me, are just women that I greatly admire. So I 4 women, I asked them 4 questions in 4 minutes. So it's not, 1 question a minute. So it wasn't a big commitment, but it was nice to get that, to have those conversations. I just recorded it today. And then I also chose 4 women in history who I just think made an impact. I'm not going to tell you who they are.
Yeah, no, you don't want to spoil it.
You have to look. You have to check it out. It's very eclectic.
That sounds interesting. So people can just kind of look up Stacys Rise project on the internet if they want to find out more information about that or anything.
Yeah, so they can just go to Stacy's Pita Chip Company, or if you're interested in any of the female entrepreneur stuff or the women's successful women and women's history, you can just go to my Instagram.
That sounds great. I know you told me you're a little under the weather, so I don't want to keep you too long talking here, but I just want to say we're really grateful that you were able to join us for the interview today and that we were able to get this done. And I want folks to try to get these in their mouth, like Stacy said, and let's try them and let's get them. I'm going to take them home and eat them and give them a try.
BeBoldBars.com. Yeah, they're made from, nut butters, nuts, chia, maple, wildflower honey. And there is no process to them. We take those great ingredients, we mix them together, we press it, we pack it, and we chill it. That is it. There's
healthy
nothing
stuff.
else to it. They're very, very simple, but that's what makes them delicious.
That sounds great. That sounds like right up my alley, the kind of stuff I eat, except I eat chocolate chip scones too, but other than that, I keep it pretty healthy.
Once in a while, it's okay.
But thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Stacy Madison, Stacy's Pita Chips, and Be Bold Energy Bars. Thank you for being here and talking to us. I really appreciate it. Well, that was a great interview. Stacy Madison, Stacy's Pita Chips, and her new Be Bold Bars. Healthy food for you. I really enjoyed that because I think it's one of those great success stories that someone followed their intuition. So that's what we're all about here. Remember to download, subscribe, review, whatever you got to do to be part of this podcast. We really appreciate that you tune in and watch, and I thank you so much. This is Kurt Newman, signing off.
Thanks for listening to Staring at the World with BoDeans, Kurt Newman, a podcast about creative innovation. Please be sure to download, subscribe, rate, and review, and keep listening wherever you get your podcasts.